Hey everybody, this is Josh.
And Carolyn.
With Homesteading Family. And welcome back to our pantry chat, for lack of a better
right. What do you
title
guys think
yet.
we should call this? Like
Yeah,
our series is sitting down here. Do you have any idea what pantry chat?
Well, and this is the spot we chose right now, but this is, like we were saying last week, this is going to become a weekly event where we're going to get together with you guys, and somewhere we want to title it. We're kind of calling it the Pantry Chat.
We may not stay in the pantry.
Right, we
now,
may not.
There's a lot of snow outside, so we're not sitting outside, but I don't know. Maybe in the summer we'll want to go to the garden.
We might.
Sure.
But, so, you know what? You guys got feedback. We're going to be hanging with this. We're sticking with this. Going to commit to it, at least for 6 months, a year, see how it goes. But, and make sure it's working for everybody.
We're not committing to every single week.
No.
We're going to try.
Right, we're going to try.
But we're not committing. Our life is so busy that it's hard to commit to anything like that.
But we are committing to making a run of this dialogue with you guys right here through the season. And if it works, great. If you guys love it, if it's working for us, then hopefully it'll become a long-term place, long-term spot. So if you've got ideas on what to call this, just throw them in the line down there. So...
what are you guys up to this week? Right now it's in January.
Yeah.
We're under snow. So hey, type a comment in. Let us know what you guys are doing, what projects you're into right now. What have you got going on the homestead?
Planning. This is January for us is the month of planning. It's natural. We've kind of reflected on how it went last year. And we got to get ready for this year. We're under snow, and I love it because I get to think about the gardens, and that just gets me through the gray. The seasonal gray is
it's seed catalog syndrome.
Oh,
you get so excited.
Right, yeah. And sketching out the garden. So that's, I'm planning the garden. We're chatting about what do we want to grow? How much? Do we want to make any changes and focus more on a particular crop? And so it's really a lot of thoughts, and around that other infrastructure issues on the new property. Got a lot to do. Got to prioritize. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes.
Right.
But really, it's garden planning for me at the moment. What about you?
With all the moves this year, I did not preserve as much food as I like to preserve.
Yeah.
So I know this looks like a lot of food to you guys back here, but we have a large family and we have a lot of guests in and out of our house, and we really try to minimize shopping at the grocery store.
Right. Yeah.
Food's expensive when you get really good quality food. So I am on a mission right now to be refilling our pantry shelves specifically with our own home canned meals. So whole meals, having that convenience foods is so handy, especially when you come back into the busy garden and preserving seasons, coming spring, summer, fall. Having those meals on hand are so handy.
Especially not just this time of year, but we come towards the hunger gap, right? We come towards that area where everything's greening up outside, but the pantry's getting even lower.
Right.
And so we need more of those foods. Good time to take like some of your beans. We bulk store a lot, so taking some of your beans, getting them canned now.
Yeah, I think we got a bunch starting right over here somewhere.
They're ready for meals.
Yep.
Potatoes if you're storing potatoes.
Yeah.
Even squash. There's a lot of things you can be canning.
Cabbages, carrots, all those things that are kind of in the celery space, or the cellar space right now. And are starting to maybe go. They're not going to be great for much longer.
Yeah, don't let them go bad.
Don't let them go bad. Put them into something else to make them last for much longer and become that convenience food where you've got dinner ready, sitting on the shelf in a jar, just ready to heat up. Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Easy.
So let us know what you guys are into, what you're doing, thinking about, and planning. And let's get into today's topic.
Yeah.
Okay. Number one question, I think just all time, certainly in the survey we did, but all time is time. How do we have time to do it all?
Right.
And you guys are asking, how are you going to have time to do all the things you want to do? And I guess we could be real short and say, well, it's a mystery. Let us know. But we've definitely learned a few things along the way.
Absolutely. And I think the very top number one thing is don't do it all. You don't have to do everything, and in fact, it's not effective if you try to do everything.
You can't, and you just burn out. We just burn ourselves out trying to do it all.
We have seen more people quit trying to do things, trying to grow their own food or whatever it is that they're doing to try to be more resilient and more self-sufficient, because they burn out, because they just tried to do too many things all at once at the beginning.
And it's kind of natural. A lot of folks that are pursuing this lifestyle, whether you've moved into the country or whether you're just doing what you can where you're at, we're kind of, all in. I mean, there's a passion that goes here, and it's kind of all in. And so there's a mentality with a lot of us that I got to do it. I got to dive in and do it all. And then when it doesn't all happen, it's like, oh, this doesn't work.
This doesn't work.
I'm done.
Yeah.
You know what? There's a lot of balance, and we have sure had to learn that balance over the years. In that this is a journey. We all would love to be there. Total self-sufficiency, sustainability, whatever that picture is that you have of that place we're trying to get to. The reality is this is a journey. It's a long journey over a lot of years, building skills, experiences,
building
knowledge.
health because of what you're doing. There's a lot of things.
And so sometimes we're going to race forward. We're going to be able to do a whole bunch of new things. Sometimes we got to go, oh man, I got to pull back. I got to pull back. Really want to do this, focus on this area. But I can't. I got to pull back
Just
right
can't
now.
do it right now. Yeah.
So with that, we've kind of got some core strategies that help think about time a little bit, and kind of when you're getting your boots on the ground and how to approach it. So you want to dive in?
Yeah. Well, I think number one starting place for when you go, wow, I have too much to do for the time I have allotted to do it, is find out how much time it actually takes you to do the things you have to do every day in a non-rushed manner.
Right.
So for me, that's finding your baseline. Find out, just to keep the house running, just to keep whatever projects you have going right now, how long does that take you? Who has to be involved? And, taking a real good look at those things.
Yeah, you're kind of measuring. Measure it, write it out, mind map it. I mean, there's all kinds of different tools to do that. You don't have to get super technical, but definitely write it down somehow. Get it to where you can see what's going on. You've kind of got a list of things that you're doing that you have to do, how long it takes, or how long it takes each person. It's usually several people involved. Sometimes it's just you. But and with that, need to think about some of the things that you want to do. Right? Some of the things that you're hoping to add in. We've all got those. I don't think that will ever end. There's always going to be.
There's always a long
I want to add in the skill, whatever it is. So you want to add that after you've kind of cataloged what it is that you're doing. What is it you want to do? What do you think that will take? Give that a little bit of thought.
Right, and that's so important because a lot of times we just get excited. We see that new thing on Pinterest, right? Yeah. Pinterest is the downfall for so many of us. Stay off Pinterest if you don't have time. And you're like, oh, I really want to do that thing. And you go, well, it's the weekend. I've got a few minutes to get that started right now. But you don't really take into that full accounting of what that's going to take to maintain every day, where that's going to fit into your schedule, who's going to maintain it. In our house, we've got a lot of kids that are very helpful. And so there is an opportunity to say, hey, this person has a little time in their morning chores that maybe they could, help take care of this ferment or whatever it is that we're doing. But make sure that you take all that into account so that look, my baseline time is already more full than I have time for. I really can't add something else in until I drop something else out.
And there's a lot of things that are valuable to do, but they may not be valuable to do right now.
Right.
Valuable to do right now. So this is where this just getting it all out, kind of brainstorming what you've got to do, what you want to do. Then kind of next bullet point is to prioritize, to start to prioritize those things. I mean, obviously your have-to-dos are already there, but you can even prioritize those, and you may see some areas that need more attention, or maybe they can use less attention. Maybe I don't have to do that. I thought I did. Yeah. And then you can figure out, so then what's the priority of the want-to-dos, right? The things, the skills you want to add, or I want to grow a garden, or I want to grow a larger garden, or I want to add a certain animal in, or whatever, the list is endless.
And I gotta really encourage you guys that when you're thinking about your priorities, relationships really need to be number one. It doesn't matter what you're eating if your relationships are falling apart around you. So running around from to do to do to do, but letting your relationships fall apart around you, that's not going to serve your purpose in the long run.
And you bring up a really good point, and we get comments about, oh, you guys live the dream and it's peaceful and it's this and that, and yes, it is a lot of times, but we have to work to make it that, because this life and this life that we all desire and that we're working toward can become just as fast-paced, pressurized, and intense as any other life, if we allow it to. And matter of fact, it will naturally if we don't, prioritize and
keep it under control.
Right, and relationships is a big part of that, right? And
especially if you have children in the house, if you have a spouse in the house, adding time into everything you're doing to do it at a pace that it can become a family item, a family event, so that you're not going so fast that the toddler can't jump in and join you. So I would just say, just make sure that is number one on your priority list. And then below that, when you're looking at priorities, we have different values that we assign to things, right? One is, I just really want to do that.
Right.
Another is, that's going to save me a lot of money.
Yeah.
Another one is, wow, if I just do this one thing, that is going to save me so much time. I'll be able to do all these other things. So just taking a real look at what is the value in what you're doing.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's really hard to quantify, because making one decision will affect everything else. I think of like bringing on a milk cow into our house, and wow, that milk cow saves us so much money in good quality dairy.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot of time.
It's a large commitment. It's a very,
very
large
time.
commitment.
Yeah. And so, just really looking at the whole accounting of a project when you're thinking of prioritizing it.
Right, and another example is just your garden, and just trying to get into the details, the specifics. You may have a lot of things you want to grow, but what's best for you to grow? What does your family eat? What grows well in your area? What energy goes into preserving or preparing what you grow? Right. Just that right there can help you still garden, but make that garden doable. Absolutely. And do you have something inside that's kind of like that? That's a little more honed in example.
You put me on the spot. I was actually thinking of an example of what you were saying. Is I know my aunt and uncle, they would garden. Vegetable gardens, but they would not grow low dollar crops. They thought, it's just too easy to go to the grocery store and buy the organic version of that. I'm just going to do that. But they really dialed in growing the high value crops that was too expensive for them to buy the way they wanted organically. So they really put all of their energy and time when it came to gardening into those high value crops. That was their high priority to them.
That's a great example. And we have that here in root crops. We had ground, this ground's a little different now, but we had ground that was very rocky.
Right.
We have a fantastic organic producer of root crops, potatoes, carrots, beets, and brassicas, cabbages, whatnot. Right. And it just made sense to buy from them. And focus on other crops that we could do well. Right. And so hopefully just the gardening subject helps you see a little bit. You can get into the details and prioritizing on all kinds of different areas and making sure that you're adding the most value for your commitment. Right. As you're spending time on a particular project.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so far we've talked about finding your baseline, prioritizing.
Yep.
Okay.
And so next is to start to create systems for everything. And that's just organization would be another word.
This is kind of that saying, a place for everything and everything in its place. This is just a place for everything in your day and everything in its place, so that you have that system that says, hey, first thing in the morning when I'm brewing my coffee, I'm going to feed my sourdough starter and take care of my kefir grains, whatever it is, but having a plan for where everything goes. And I really, really recommend writing those things down. And it's great if you're sharing that with somebody else. So like if you have children, then writing it down. You really have encouraged me to do this. And it just helps to communicate that expectation very clearly across the lines, and then you can work that out in a much more conversational way, rather than you didn't do your job.
Well, and this is almost another subject, but that helps shape expectations.
It does,
both for yourself and the people that you're working with. And I think outlining is a great way to think about how you lay this out, because we could get real detailed. We outline our day, right? We kind of know when we're getting up. We know the things we're going to do to get our day going, and there's these sections in the day. And you could get really rigid. I mean, you can, just 8 to 8:15, blah, 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 blah. And on down through the day, and it becomes this very pressurized system. But you can achieve the same thing with a little more relaxation by outlining and say, this period, we're doing these things. There's a time to stop and cut it off. Whatever your morning routine is, take care of yourself. you know, quiet time, you know, whatever it is, exercise. And then you kind of outline that day. That gives you a guide, and you do want to work to stick towards that, but you're also not going to be so rigid on yourself and other people that it's this do or die mentality. To me, that's the balance. And so I guess I like that thought of an outline.
Absolutely.
And it sets goals, sets parameters, creates these systems.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you always want to keep that flexible. And for me, again, that comes back to relationship. And that has a lot to do with, we've got a lot of kids in the house right now. And so I want to be able to be responsive for when somebody wants to come and talk, or somebody wants to cuddle or spend a little bit of time. I don't want my schedule to be so rigid that I can't adjust for that. So that I think is really important on that.
And you're maintaining that relationship and that
As
going
that
back to the priority,
right.
even as you start to create systems and scheduling, you're still maintaining that priority. That's where that flexibility says, yeah, we're going to do this, but we do have some priorities. If they interrupt, you know, they interrupt. We work with it. We work around it and try to stay out of it.
And this may be the case for you if you work all day and you come home and your time to do things is just in the evening or the weekends, just kind of figuring out your timeline there in a way that's not so pressurized or not so tight. But I really recommend writing that down, mostly because life throws us curveballs. You know, somebody gets sick, the cow has a calf, and you end up having to deal with issues there. Something happens somewhere along the line, and you get completely thrown. Vacation, you know, I mean, it could be a good thing. It can be all sorts of things. You get thrown off. When you have it written down, then you have that record to come back to and go, okay, wait, something was working. What was working? Let's get back to that and reinstate that. So just getting that written down, not as, you know, your taskmaster, but as your tool to say, well, let's get back to this because this is what was helping us get these things done in this order.
And then you've also got in here, which is great, we both do this, is checklists for those items.
Right.
It's really important for, you know, some sort of accounting, time accounting, person accounting, both for ourselves and for the kids. I keep track of all the things that you know, each of us is doing. And so some checklists, again, helps us check those things off, you know, through the day or through the week or month. I think also, and you may have some more feedback on this, it helps us go back and look because you kind of get a feedback loop going here, and especially when you're getting started adding in a project or a new home, a new place, getting things going, you've got to, as you've got these systems and a checklist, you start seeing how it's working, and you're going to find you've got to make adjustments. You can't just be so rigid and I just have to do this. You start realizing, okay, this isn't really working. This item on the checklist isn't getting done, or it's too much pressure on this person. And then you can go back to, you know, your prioritization and your list, and you make adjustments. So especially early on in tackling a lifestyle change or a new large project, that's going to take some time as you give feedback after you're doing it and make adjustments, right? And you start to hone it in. So that's where that checklist to me becomes pretty important.
Right. So, and I think I want to add on to there, and I think I'm adding a whole nother section here in the time management, is being realistic that when you're learning a new skill, it takes a lot more time than when you actually have that skill dialed in.
Absolutely.
You know, I love those little, when you get recipes online, a lot of times it'll say how much active work you have, how much prep time, things like that. But they didn't count in how much time you spent on Pinterest again, looking for that recipe, how much time it took you to get all the ingredients together. There is a lot that goes into the planning and the preparation phase. And if you're learning a new skill, whether it's bread making or gardening or canning or something like that, you spend a lot of time going back and checking your information, right? Did I do this right? What's the next step? What do I do next? And there's a lot of mental space that has to be devoted to that new skill. That is the bulk of learning something. Once you learn that skill and you get it down on a small scale, then all of a sudden you can multiply that a lot of times, and you can be effective because you have all this time that you weren't researching, you weren't wondering what do I do and asking people and all of that. You can just apply that to being effective in what you're doing. So starting on the small scale, getting good on a small scale, and moving up and realizing there's only so many new skills you can start at one time.
And that's such a good point and so important to note, because people say, well, how do you do it all? How do you do everything? Well,
we didn't start
you
all
didn't
at one
always,
time.
and you can't just go do everything.
Yeah.
But what is hard to see sometimes is as you embrace a skill and you learn it, you go from, wow, this takes a lot of time because I'm learning, I'm watching something on YouTube, or I'm reading a book, or I'm just practicing, but eventually that moves into you've mastered that skill set.
Right.
And so, that takes less time and you're better at it.
Yeah.
And then you can add more in. And so that stacks over time, over years, to wwhere you can do a lot more eventually. So have a little hope in that area. If you are really going, I can never do all this. Yeah, you can. You can do a lot. You got to build up to it over time. And as you master things, you can add more in.
So adding one thing or two things at the most at a time until you get those kind of dialed in really is a key to time management.
And that segues into planning time for new projects. So, there's always a lot we want to learn. There's more we want to do. There's more we need to do, depending on our goals. And so leaving yourself time in your to-do list and in your prioritization to learn new things. Right? Yeah.
To have that extra time with a new project. You add that extra padding because it's a new skill. But also, I think with this, plan in where it fits in your day.
Yeah.
Who's doing it, how much time it's taking, and when in a day you're doing it. If you're thinking, hey, let's add chickens this year, you don't just think about how long does it take us to build the coop, and get set up. Think about how much time does that take every day, who's going to do it, when are they going to do that, where does that fit amongst everything else?
You have water systems, time to get your feed, depending on where you're at. You may have to go out of the way to get chicken feed. There's all kinds of nuances, and you're right. You want to do that time accounting. Consider those things. Let's see, moving along, batching everything. Making your time efficient by grouping tasks that work together. And finding where they fit in your day, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is really effective when it comes to the kitchen, right? This is where I really think about it. But there's other areas that I use it in the house a lot. We bake large batches of bread once a week. Actually, twice a week. Our family's large, so we go through a lot of bread and a lot of some of the base, broth and things like that. But doing that all in one batch so that you can get that project done, get your extra bread in the freezer, and move on, so that you don't have to make bread until either the next week, or maybe you can do enough. Maybe it's just one of you or two of you, and you can do a batch of 6 loaves of bread at a time. Stick the rest in the freezer, and you don't need to come back and do bread again for another month. Find ways like that. I do that with soap making. I make soap for the family once a year. I take 1 or 2 days and I make all the soap we need for the entire year. Sometimes I even get ahead of that. Right now we're working on a several-year-old batch because I really made a lot. And I plan in enough to be able to give as gifts during the holidays and little gift baskets to neighbors and friends. And but I try and just do that all at once. That way I can put that stuff away and I'm done with that project. So really batch what you're doing to make your time more effective, and not just do more, but be better with the time that you have.
Yeah, it's just kind of time efficiency, economy of motion.
Right. Yeah.
Just getting the most bang for your buck. And as you develop skills, you get better at that. As you're more skilled at like soap making, the easier that is to do. So I think we're pretty good. Yeah, okay. On that we need to move along. Getting through there on time. And so getting down there, creating margin.
Yeah.
Plan in time for nothing.
For nothing.
Or nothing being, relaxing, Pinterest, coffee, people, time. It is so easy to get going. Like I was saying before, this lifestyle can be as demanding and high pressured as any.
Yeah.
We have to choose to tone it down.
Yeah.
And we have to choose to make people important, to give ourselves space and time.
Yeah, and time away from the homestead, I would say. Add that in, that way you get a fresh breath of air, especially, we work from home, we homeschool, we're at home all the time. It's really important to be able to get out and get to where you're not looking at all the work that you need to do around you all the time. And so make sure you plan some time to get out and have some fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
good
really
activities for the whole family. Get mom and dad out.
Yes.
Date night. And the kids too, need to balance what you're doing there as they're developing skills and working with you, but they've got their own lives, things they want to do, especially as they get older, and they need to have the freedom to pursue those things as well. Well, and that kind of leads into one of our last topics is involving everybody, involving the kids.
Yeah, you really want to bring the kids into the process if you have children that you're homesteading with. If you have other adults in the homestead, sometimes they'll be willing to help, and sometimes they'll be happy to help. Sometimes they're fully on board. But of course, you always have to be respectful if you have adults, even adult children on the homestead that are not into it, trying to find the area that they're interested in and asking for their cooperation, their assistance in those areas, and not just making, everybody go weed the garden, especially if they're an adult. As children, I'm always thinking in the house when I've got jobs to be shared amongst children, who is the youngest person that can do this? That way the older people can always be moving on to something more interesting, more exciting, requiring more skills. So they don't get too stagnant, because that just gets old. Nobody wants to be stuck doing the baseline jobs all the time.
Well, yeah, none of us do. That's why planning in that time for new projects and new learning, we all want to be learning and growing. That's just human nature generally, and especially the young folks. And then I think as you're working, especially with children, training them into jobs, to always be looking towards that moment when they can do it themselves. So always be training them to do it without your assistance. I know, Josh, you're really good at this when it comes to working with kids out with animals, because you really train them, look at the whole situation, look at the animal. Does anything look like it's off with the animal? Do they look like they're happy? Do they look like they're healthy? Just giving them that ability to one day take over that whole project and kind of be the boss. Well, and that's ultimately building a skill that takes less time to get that job done. More eyes on it, more skill set there, and bringing it back to that allows us to do more as people are involved and as we grow in skills.
Absolutely.
So, we're getting down there on time. You want to summarize real quick and just the takeaways?
Go over some of the top ones.
Sure.
Find your baseline. Find what it takes you to do it every day. Prioritize. Make sure you're doing the things that are the most important to you. Create a system for everything. Do you want to jump in on some of these?
Create systems. Have flexibility. That's especially those first few are a loop as you get going that you're going to have to shuffle. You're going to have your ideals, work towards them, have some flexibility, and adjust as you need to, especially within those, your baseline, and you're prioritizing and you're creating your systems.
Planning in time for new projects and understanding where they fit in your day. And your week.
Exactly. Batching everything, creating an economy of motion or time, and doing things in groups that naturally get done well together is helpful.
Plan in margins so that you can have fun, take a deep breath, not be rushing around all the time, and sit on the front porch in the sun with a cup of coffee and not feel guilty about it.
Absolutely.
And then involve the kids.
Involve the kids, involve
everybody.
Well, whoever you can, whoever is a part of your life, involve everybody, and working together, everybody growing in skills makes it fun, makes it enjoyable, and it becomes more time efficient. Over time. If you just try to do everything yourself, that's the least time efficient. Even though in the moment sometimes it feels like I'll just get it done.
Sometimes it takes longer to start.
So good. You know what? We hope that really helps. And take a moment. If you've got some specific questions regarding time management, throw them in there right now. And when we get to the next session, we'll answer a few of those. And talk about them. And thinking about the next time we get together, hopefully next week. We're working towards that.
We're gonna try.
Not promising, but working toward every week. Looks like we're going to talk about how to gain skills when you lack knowledge. We had a lot of people talking about I just need so much more knowledge and trying to take it all in. And so we're going to talk about that next week.
Yeah, that's a really good one. So we'll see you guys then.
Take care.
Goodbye.
Bye.